yesterday, when wealth was a social law, the official concern today revolves around the poor. Their sexual fancies and wild emotion, unemployment, education, ethnic composition have now become interesting studies of exhaustive attention.
All right, so let me start by thanking you for agreeing to do this. I mean, you have an intellectual who spent a lot of time making Calypso sort of part of the basis of your work you retired as a professor of literature at the University of the West Indies. Sparrow, the life of Sparrow has been central to a lot of what you've done. You've written more than one pieces of work on him. Let me ask you to begin. Why
what?
Why choose Sparrow, and what is it about Sparrow
why I chose Sparrow?
Yeah.
Well, this thing started in England in 1966, 67 with the Caribbean Artists Movement. And they began by trying to determine what they called the Caribbean aesthetic. In other words, what were the kinds of things that we created, and what were the standards by which we assessed the goodness or the badness of what we were making. And everybody included Kamau Brathwaite, George Lamming, Orlando Patterson, and a whole number of people gathered in London at the time. Everybody was saying what they thought was this special Caribbean thing. And I wasn't saying anything because, I mean, these were big voices and big noises, and I was just a little fella doing a degree, a doctorate in Birmingham, invited down for the occasion. So they discovered that I wasn't saying anything. So they asked me, well, what you have to say? Why are you just sitting down and not saying anything? And I said that I thought you were going about this thing entirely the wrong way. What do you suggest is the way that we should deal with it? I said, well, my assumption is that any people anywhere in the world create whatever it is they create, and have their own notions of how to place value on what they create. Now, if you come into the Caribbean, you're coming to a whole number of different islands, a whole number of different people. And you would find that Jamaica was different from Trinidad. And Trinidad and Jamaica were both different from Guyana and Barbados, and St. Vincent and St. Lucia. So what we had to do was to get samples of what each island created, what the writers were saying, what the musicians were doing, get what we might consider to be representative samples. And look at these, and if we looked at, say, Trinidad, I would say we would want to look at the Calypso, we'd want to look at Sam Selvon, we'd want to look at Vijay Naipaul, and we'd find out whether there's anything at all that is common to what they're doing. And that would give us a sense of what the Trinidad experience was like and how its artists had been exploring this experience and expressing this experience. I said in Trinidad, you might want to look at somebody like Sparrow. Then in Jamaica, you'd want to look at Don Drummond and the Scatterlights. You want to look at the music. I don't remember whether Bob Marley was prominent at that time. He might have been. But you'd want to look at Roger Mays, the novelist. you'd want to look at, I don't know, there were sculptors, there were painters, people like Ras, Daniel, Hartman, and so on. And you'd want to see whether the Jamaicans had a particular way, there was a particular vibe coming from Jamaica.
Not quite Edna Manley yet.
Well, Edna Manley, anybody like that. And the point about it is that you would find that there is a lot of variety in each place. But when you had got this, all of this, you bring it together and decide whether there is anything Caribbean running through all of these different manifestations. So they challenged me. I haven't challenged them, they challenged me. They said, well, okay, why don't you do it? I said, well, that's not what I'm working on, but if you challenge me, I will try to do it. And a friend of mine, well known in Trinidad, of course, Dr. Professor Maureen Warner Lewis, she was just Maureen Warner at that time. Her brother was part of our set of colleagues at Birmingham. He was doing chemical engineering along with a few other Trinidadians and Jamaicans and so on. And she had just come up to do her master's in Edinburgh, I think. And she had brought a book of sparrows, 120 calypsos to remember, or something like that. And that was an amazing thing, because there had never been a collection of any single Calypsonian's calypsos. And in 8 years on the stage, he had sung 120 calypsos, which he thought one needed to remember. And that book was a great help to me, because I was able to look at a single Calypsonian's development over an 8-year period, and to break it down into themes. I kind of approach it as a kind of poetry and a kind of narrative too. So I looked at all those themes, and I realized that, hey, apart from talking about the calypso, one Calypsonian had an immensity of work to his credit, and could stand up alongside an Paul or a Selvin. So that is how I started. I then wrote Sparrow and the Language of Calypso.
Yeah, you talk about having given a lecture on that in 1968, in February at the Port of Spain Town Hall.
Yes, I was passing through here. I'd finished my doctorate, and I think it might have been Lloyd West. Certainly Daphne Rousseau was part of it, and they invited me to do this lecture. They had heard about it somehow from the one I gave in England. And they asked me to do it here at the town hall on February the 19th, because my birthday, my 26th birthday, would have been February the 20th, the next day. So I gave the lecture and then, in a sense, cleared out of town because, and one of the nicest things that I can remember was in Guyana, I got a letter, a little note. I don't know who sent it, but whoever sent it had gotten in touch with Best or somebody, and they sent it on to my address in Guyana. And all it said was that my trip from San Fernando to a 10-year lecture was well worth it. and that for me was I had a great feeling about that.
7 is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
But you are the driving force of this program. We will be able to take your concerns to the various agencies to have them resolved for you.
You cannot get through on that NIB line, You're telling you. They have the line, but you're calling and you're holding on and you're holding on.
We have spoken to them up to this morning up there at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex about your matter. It is engaging their attention. They're saying a thorough investigation has been done. Although they have spoken to WASA, despite their many reports to the authority, WASA, you're not doing anything further.
We have a beautiful water supply.
It's good now.
Yes, through you, Sharon, you helped us.
I'm very glad that all has worked out, and thank you for letting us know.
I'm so grateful and thankful because of how many years that we complaining.
It's Madam Fix It with Sharon Farfan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 11:30 to 12 noon, right here on WESN.
What I was going to ask about, in 1968, in my sense of the period, reading about it, that was sort of the flowering of what was called the New World Movement, and maybe these things were part of what that meant?
Yes. Best, I don't know if he had returned from his various stints abroad. You know, he had before that been in Guyana as economic advisor to the Jagan government. And,
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
Yeah.
And had published about 50 editions of a cyclo-styled journal called New World Fortnightly. that was an interesting thing. And then he had been to Toronto. I don't know what he was doing there. But he came back. While he was abroad, the New World Movement had already been established, and they were discussing every week nearly in a place, in an old house. I think it was owned by John Humphrey, opposite one of the squares. I can't remember which square it was, Columbus or one of them. And they were discussing...
Might have been Lord Harris, further up uptown. Might have been.
Yeah, it could be that one. And they were discussing whether the movement should remain a sort of intellectual movement, analyzing politics, writing papers, making statements, or whether it should become more activist. And Lloyd was away. James Millett kind of stepped in, and he was on the side of its really becoming more activist. There was also a discussion about whether the movement did not need a regular journal, like a quarterly, or even a fortnightly, like in Guyana. And Millett, I remember, went in one direction, and Cyril O'Hare went in another direction. He stuck with Best. He had been in Guyana at the same time as Best.
As a Foreign Service officer for Trinidad and Tobago, I remember that part of it.
Yes. And when Best came back, he was really very annoyed, and he said that he had made New World and he could break New World. And that distressed me a whole lot. Because even before the intellectuals had a movement, they were talking fragmentation. They couldn't contain their differences. And Millet went the way of forming a political party.
United National Independence Party.
Yes. But before that, the question of publishing a journal resurfaced. And the incident with Walter Rodney's being banned from re-entering Jamaica came to a head, and all the activity on the campus and an activity which took the campus out into Kingston. So there was activism there too. I mean, most of the students there were startled at finding themselves in downtown Kingston. Jamaica is a very serious place. And the campus is almost like a sealed off island community in Mona, what we call Mona Bowl. It's in the center of mountain ranges. And so when you get out of that cocoon, you have to confront a different world outside, which has been a big problem in Jamaica, as it is a problem here.
In fact, that period, sort of one of the persons for whom those were his seminal moments is the current Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Alf Gonzalez. But I want to come back to that because he likes to talk about having been there and how that was the building of his consciousness and so on.
I can't remember him at the time, but I know he was one of what I would have called the younger ones. Ralph Gonzalez. And, okay. So we got all of this correspondence from Mona about what had been happening. Because we had no notion. There was no real communication between the different islands in the Caribbean.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to get to is that in that milieu, what was happening at that time, you were...
I was here. I had come here, passing through to go home to Guyana after England, while I was here, I learned that I had gotten a job. I had applied. Mona, we had advertised 2 jobs. One in Jamaica. I said I want to go there. And one in Trinidad. When they told me that I got the one in Trinidad, I was a bit disappointed.
But it's a good thing because here we're talking about
No, but I was a bit disappointed, partly because coming out of a research situation, you look for a library. A library seems to be a very important part of, of your life. And Mona Library was, for me, a magnificent place with a lot of stuff that people hadn't even bothered to look at. So I entertained the notion of sinking into that stuff and beginning to develop perspectives on Caribbean literature and whatever else.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Trinidad had a pretty good library too from the ICTA days, Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture.
Yeah, so you're talking about St. Augustine.
Yes.
As opposed to the library in Port of Spain.
Yeah. So I got a job in Trinidad and I said, okay, I mean, jobs are not easy to get for people who have done literature. I came back. So about 6 weeks after I had passed through here and done Sparrow and the language of Calypso, I came back. Now, one of the things about talking about the Calypso is that you're talking about people's business. You're talking about people's conversation. You're talking about people's narrative, what they say about themselves. In fact, the Calypso was perhaps the only source that we had about what was going on inside the barrack yard, how people thought about each other, man-woman situations, all kinds of things. The whole, you may call it rhetoric of survival, because we are all about survival in this place. Yeah. The women are survivalists, the men are survivalists. What does a woman do to survive? What does a man do to survive? And is there any room for things like love when you're dealing with survival? Or do you do and settle with whoever can enhance your chances to survive?
Yeah, and you explore those themes in Sparrow's Calypso.
Yes, Sparrow and the Language of Calypso. I've seen it in Sparrow and the Language.
Don't do that, honey. I never had a man to do that to me. You making me feel so sweet.
So I want to say, you say here, my whole life is Calypso. This publication that we're talking about, it's your personal tribute to the Mighty Sparrow. You wrote it at the time when when you put it together at that time when he was 80 years old. And you said years of affirmative performance of Calypsos.
Yes, I'm saying once you get into people's business, you can't get out. Even if I had wanted to get away from talking about Calypso, I couldn't. I was being invited by different places, by the training college, to talk about Calypso. Then since reggae, and well, they didn't even call it reggae then, but it was, Jamaican music, rocksteady.
Rocksteady was before reggae.
Emerging at that time, or had emerged. I was being asked to compare the two. No, I didn't know anything about how to compare the two, but you had to invent something. You had to look at them and see what you thought, a layman's opinion. So I got interested in Jamaican music and its evolution, Calypso and its evolution, and the points where they converged. Because there were many points where they converged. I mean, John Buddy Williams is well known. Things like Sheep on Top is really a Jamaican man too. John Buddy Williams. Kitchener had spent some time in Jamaica, about 6 months before he actually went to England. And he sang a calypso called Jamaica, Jamaica, how he misses Jamaica now that he's in this place called England. So you had, and then you had, of course, you had the Belafonte singing calypsos. Belafonte was singing folk songs.
But which they called Calypso.
Well, everybody started calling it the Calypso because he was singing folk songs. He was singing mentos that he had heard Louise Bennett sing, that he had heard Edric Connor was singing folk songs too. Belafonte pulled from all of these, and then he pulled from Sparrow. All kinds of people were pulling from Calypso. Melodies Boo Boo Man became very popular. Robert Mitchum said he was singing calypsos. Sarah Vaughan said she was singing calypsos. Banana Boat Song became known as a calypso. Deo. So you had the name Calypso became what? The name by which West Indian music made that leap into the world out there. It could have been England, it could have been America, or other kind of circum-Caribbean places. Everything was being called Calypso.
Yeah, Maya Angelou's first recorded album
Maya
was called
Angelou,
Miss
yes.
Calypso.
Maya Angelou has a very sexy picture on her record, CD these days, when she used to be a nightclub dancer, and she too was singing calypso. Yeah. So you they had problems with it. That's how you know there was a Caribbean aesthetic. Yeah. When Robert Mitchum had to sing, shut your mouth, go away, mama look a boo-boo day. He had a whole heap of trouble. He couldn't handle the syncopation. And you know that he was doing something which wasn't his thing. Yeah. In England, for example, I was part of a small pan side of Trinidadians. Myself, well, did we have a Jamaican? I don't think we had a Jamaican person in it. Trinidadians, myself, and the Trinidadians were mainly Chinese and a kind of French Creole.
Oh, the name of Russ Henderson, he was in that? Russell Henderson.
Yes.
He was in that group?
No.
Yeah, okay.
He was probably in London.
After, yeah.
Well, we were in Birmingham. We were just a pick-up kind of university side, having fun. But there was a fellow named Roy Jacobs, who was a Trinidadian and who did some of our pan tuning. But the Trinidadian fellas, these Chinese fellas, we would go around and look for pans, look for drums. And I bought a Thames van, and we would pick up these drums, put them in the van, and take them behind the Gamechangers department and saw them with a hacksaw and sink them and tune them. These fellows worked out all kinds of ways of tuning the pan, which are not conventional, but it's just the way that
it worked.
Yeah?
And it worked.
It worked out, yes. Yeah. I lost my left ear sinking a pan because when you see again, little petty bourgeois kids messing with the people's business. You don't know that you didn't just go and sink a pan. You had to have
muffs and so on.
And this kind of thing. I didn't know anything about that. I was thinking, and as you sink the pan, the steel cries out. And as it cries out, it gets into your ear. And it mashed my ear up. Mashed your sense of direction. You lost your sense of balance.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
All right, so I want to come to where you started to talk about, how Sparrow is cementing himself on the scene, and you deal with the title of One Calypso, by which time he had gained a lot of prominence, and he had this calypso, if Sparrow says so is so, which was true, so that people in the society believed what they heard him say and sing.
Well, I don't know. Sparrow's situation in Trinidad was always ambiguous. Sparrow came here when he was born in 1935.
Yeah.
He came here when he was 21 months old. His father, Rupert, was a builder. His mother, Clarissa, was a housewife. But he never got over the blemish, I suppose you have to call it, of having been born in Grenada.
And for a long time, he was not allowed to get over it because people would always throw it in his face.
Oh, yes.
You describe him at one point in the book as what you call it, an exile, living in Trinidad and being considered a Grenadian.
Yes. So identity and self-location became important elements of Sparrow's whole encounter, you can't call it, with Trinidad. So there were those people who loved what he was doing, almost unequivocally. There were those people who didn't like what he was doing because they thought he was changing the calypso. He was bringing in pop songs, pop melodies. He loved Brooke Benton. He loved, I forget the name. But he loved these singers, these crooners, and they felt that this didn't have any place in calypso. But he was singing some of those songs, types of songs.
Yeah, Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart and so on, which probably came later. But
and he would make a great hit with Only a Fool Breaks His Own Heart. A bigger hit than he had made with any calypso, actually.
Why do I keep fooling myself when I know you love someone else? Only a fool breaks his own heart.
But Sparrow was prepared to do a variety of things. In his own emergence, at about age 14, 15, he told his mother he wanted to become a calypsonian. And this really caused her a great deal of dismay. But she didn't stop him, or try to stop him. He got a guitar, he learned to play a few chords, and he went around nightclubs singing.
Because he had sang at a concert in primary school. He was going to St. Patrick's. And
Newtown Boys. Yes, he sang. He used to sing. His first experience of the stage was singing as a schoolboy at concerts. But he knew calypsos even from then. Maybe he heard them being sung, as I heard them being played and sung. So he knew calypsos, and he would sing at these nightclubs. He tried, he said, to slip in his own compositions. But people didn't want to hear him. People wanted to hear what they knew. So he had to sing the calypsos that other singers, Rohler, Melody, and so on, had sung. And this was, I suppose, good and bad, but it was good in the sense that these calypsonians all had different styles. So that to sing those, effectively, you had to learn to sing, in different styles. And if you think of Sparrow's repertoire, you can see that he has a whole variety of styles.
Yeah.
And he sings every type of calypso. And of course, he had, one might argue, a better voice than almost any other singer. At least a more flexible voice.
Is that why he was called the Mighty Sparrow, to depict the bird, the sparrow?
No, they started calling him Little Sparrow when he first went into a tent, which I think was 1954. It was a tent that later became the, what was it? This Swizzle Club.
And Bombay,
Dirty Jim's.
yeah. Dirty Jim's Swizzle Club and Bombay.
Yes, in Charlotte Street.
Yeah, what is now part of South Key.
That was officially, it started in 1954. I'm not too certain that Sparrow sang there in 54 or whether he was a hanger-on. He's not mentioned, but in 55 he is mentioned as Little Sparrow. And Superior is there, Melody is there, So he has started in 55. So people think he started in 56 with Gina and Diana, but
He'd been there before, because you break up his career in 4 periods, and the first period is 55 to 64.
Yes. For sure, he sang in 55. And if you look at what he sang in that period, it was very traditional. It was little stories about this and that, race horse, using metaphors, about prostitution, which had become a major theme since the 30s and 40s, particularly.
That's Gina and Diana.
Gina Diana.
Sort of emblematic of that kind of.
It's an old time thing, an old theme.
Gina, Diana, Rosie, Torrent, Clementina. From the corner posing, but his life is something that's standing. And if you touch them broke, you can get them all for nothing. Don't make her run. Yankees gonna Sparrow take over.
The Gina and Diana era was really during the war.
Yeah.
And Invader had sung on that. Kitchener had sung on that. Lion, Attila, all of these fellas had sung calypsos on the prostitution theme. Because when the Americans left here, towards the end of the war, 46, there were 9,600 cases of venereal diseases reported as was reported in Trinidad. The Americans did bring jobs, building the base and that sort of thing, but they brought other things with them, including they increased the volume of prostitution. There was prostitution before the Americans came, but there was plenty more after they left. And when Sparrow sings Gina and Diana, he is singing that about the Yankees leaving. When they left, they didn't all leave. They had detachments there in Chaguaramas.
Yeah.
So they said they're closing the base for good.
Yeah.
So that is what that was about.
Yeah, Dorothy had to make out how she could.
After,
The line after that was Dorothy had to make out how she could.
Oh, yes, Dorothy has to make out how she could. Now this woman Dorothy, Dorothy, the name Dorothy appears over and over again in calypsos until Stalin said, "Wait, Dorothy, wait, Dorothy." But it was one of those names somehow that always appeared. I once felt that I should write a little article called "The Trials of Dorothy," because everything that goes wrong with a woman is attributed to Dorothy. Dorothy had to do what she could, had to do what she could. Jean and Dinah was followed by one which wasn't really well known, the Yankees Back Again.
Yeah,
This begins, the days of slavery back again. I hope it in reaching Port of Spain.
Slavery coming back again. I hope it in reaching Port of Spain. Since the Yankees come back over here, they buy out the whole of Point of here. Money start to pass, people start to ball. Point of here, sell the workmen and all.
60 cents a head for Grenadian, $1 for born Trinidadian. Tobagonians free, whether big or small, but they say no Bajans at all.
That was the entrance of Texaco.
That was the entrance of Texaco. And at the end, and the last answer is I'm watching my girlfriend, Mariana or something, like she wants to start some confusion. She following Olga and Doris, who intend to start this choppiness. But he doesn't, for him, the threat of the Yankees is that their dollar, the money that they could pay a prostitute was far greater than the local fellows. Yeah. So whenever Yankees are in the place, the local fellas are diminished, which is what Gina Dine is about.
Was about.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
This is the Face of Sports, and today we have a lot in store for you. Can Trinidad and Tobago win a gold medal?
I am one of a few select professional 400 hurdlers in the country, and I don't have access, or I have limited access to hurdles.
Yeah. They would pay to watch it on their television.
And they like our style.
Yes,
and our flair.
They would pay to watch it.
They copied our style and flair.
But Wesley is a struggling team. If we're not struggling, like we're not happy.
Only sport can come up with those moments, as I said. And if the world could live forever, as it did for that 2-hour period in Johannesburg that day, it would be a better place.
Andre Batiste has the Face of Sports, weekdays on WESN, Content Capital.
Hi, I'm Rakaya Scott, and join me here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. for One-on-One Season 2 on WESN Content Capital. One-on-One is that show where we're going to have meaningful and difficult conversations on topics that we usually shy away from. So don't forget, every Wednesday at 10 a.m., One-on-One Season 2 on WESN Content Capital.
So I want to come to where you talked about, in breaking up his life and career into these 4 segments. Yes. You talk about the first period being, and right through, in my view, he was enigmatic. But you describe a period in which he was both rebel and king.
Yes.
But before we go there, you have this piece you take from the writings of Pete Simon, who was writing about the typical kind of Calypsonian.
Yes.
And you know what you said in it, but my view is that, or my observation is that Sparrow always fought to be against this. He wasn't what you describe as described by
typical Calypsonian.
Yeah.
I don't know if he wasn't like that, but Sparrow had a greater impulse towards self-development, which he, like Lion and Attila and that generation before, felt would come with professionalism. In other words, he regarded singing the calypso not as a carnival thing, and then you look for a little work, in between carnivals. But the calypso was, for him, a profession. And as a profession, you needed to be paid for what you were doing. You needed to set a value on yourself and on your work. And he was very serious about that from the very start. So you might say, not that he had a greater ambition, but he had a greater sense of where he wanted to go. So when, I suppose, partly through the Belafonte effort, the name Calypso became known, and Sparrow and Melody got contracts with RCA Victor. These contracts clashed with Carnival. And that's the reason why Sparrow didn't appear after he won in 56. He didn't appear in 57 or 58 because he had to fulfill contracts in America. And that became a big quarrel in Trinidad. How you can be giving up Carnival? How you cannot defend your kingship? You know, if you are Calypso king 1 year, you have to defend it against all comers the next year. Sparrow believed that, but he also believed that the contract and the money that he was getting from the contract was far more important than the sentiment of liming in Charlotte Street, watching all the beautiful Wabines passing, and that became a nostalgic dream that he must have while he was in America fulfilling his contract. He got an appearance at Carnegie Hall, things like that. And he and Melody were the best of friends because they were both involved in that.
So their Calypso rivalry, that was just for show, where they would sing against each other.
Yeah, it was for show, but this rivalry between first Sparrow and Melody and then later on Sparrow and Kitchener, they were both set up for show. But, the worst kind of pecan is true pecan. You can say anything in pecan against somebody once it isn't true. But once you are saying something that is true, it ceases to be pecan. It becomes what they call mepui. Mepui.
The patois term.
Yeah. It's a more serious kind of in-depth insult. And Sparrow had returned in 57 with a white American wife. He was about what? He was born in 35, 57. He was just over 21, 22 years. Yeah. And he was boasting about his wife, And part of what he sang against Melody was, I marry a wife, you're going to marry one too. But your wife don't have eyes of blue. I get an next child, you go and get one too. Whatever I do, this monkey does do. Now, that was cutting it to the bone. Melody came back after Sparrow's wife left him. Because Sparrow's wife was, you may say, on a contract. He had married her to be able to get entry into the Virgin Islands and into America, you know, there were these licenses,
and then residents.
these licenses that kind of prohibited artists from coming into America from outside and getting American contracts.
So it was a kind of transactional marriage.
Yeah, Melody also married an American, but a black woman.
Yeah.
So you had, you know, Madame Dracula.
Yeah.
You had
Belmont Jackass.
And they were singing these songs, mocking each other about the wives that they married. Sparrow's problem was he liked the woman. He liked the woman. So when she left, he was kind of grieving, and this grief became the basis on which the pecan against him began to flow. Yeah. And he sang a calypso called Everybody Washing Them Out on Me. I ain't do them nothing, but they giving their tongue liberty. People say that they're sorry because I went and I married to Emily or something like that. But I love my wife, and to hell with everybody. Yeah. Melody then doesn't ease up on him. He sings a thing called Kobo Flying High. The Kobo being Sparrow, the black man, he comes with a white bird of passage, and he's flying high over everybody. And then the woman leaves him, Kobo come back down. Yeah. So you may say that the Pecan War was a setup, but the Pecan War touched truth at different points. Yeah. And as I said, when you are singing Pecan against a person and you sing the truth, it becomes more than Pecan.
Yeah. So of those four eras, those four segments of his life that you examined, what would you say is one was more outstanding than the other? One was more defining for him than the others?
The first one was the most definitive.
55 to 64. 55 to 64.
Yes, and it's the one that everybody remembers. And since that, My Whole Life is Calypso was first done for the when Sparrow, when Royal Gibbons and the Candolia people brought back Sparrow after he had had that terrible...
he said it was a life-threatening illness and
sickness.
He had surgery, yeah.
Everybody knew. Everybody knows the Calypsos. Moving from that period, which includes all those Bad John Calypsos and so on, moving from that period, you get a slicker, suave kind of Sparrow. People said that, well, he wasn't writing his Calypsos, which was probably true. There had always been a tendency of Calypsonians to cooperate, let us say, but they never let you know who they were cooperating with. Sparrow was supposed to have been singing most of his Calypsos that were composed by Reginald Joseph, Piggy Joseph.
Piggy Joseph, they said, and did Pete Simon write some in that period? And then it was said that Joker Devines. Well, you talk about some of the work with him and Joker Devines later on.
Now that became a bone of contention, because the notion was that if you are to be a true Calypsonian, you must write your own songs and perform your own songs. The problem about that is that this does not happen in any form of music, popular music or any, Whitney Houston didn't compose anything that she sang so magnificently.
Any of her major hits? Any of her major hits, as with most of them.
Nor did Frank Sinatra, nor did, and when people start to judge what were the most important and popular songs, they don't ever say that you as singer had to write your own songs. You as singer had to perform your own songs, like perform a body of songs and so on, but the songwriter was himself a professional. I think that Sparrow found that he had a volume of songs to prepare every year. You know, Sparrow's LPs, sometimes they were 2 in 1 year, would have 10 songs. And 10 good songs.
Yeah.
And I think that the people who were writing songs found it profitable, maybe, to promote Sparrow.
Yeah.
And there were people writing for Sparrow. Sparrow tended to refashion what he got, to perform it in his own inimitable style. So performance became his, you may say, his identity. It was identity as performance. And so he was moving into a phase where, you know, you're moving from, let us say, cottage industry to factory production. In cottage industry, everybody does a piece of the work. So you have the person who spins the thread. Then you have the person who weaves the fabric. Then you have the person who simply comes every month and collects what you have produced.
Yeah.
And then you may make that fabric into a garment or what. But each phase of the production is done in phases, in relay. In the music industry, you have the writer of the song, you have the person who arranges the song, and you have the person who performs the song. Yeah. And sometimes the performer is the very last person in that chain.
In the project, yeah.
But not the last, because you have the person who sells the song and who may determine which of your 8 or 9 songs are going to be projected in any given year. I think Sparrow figured that out very, very early. And as somebody who wanted to be a professional, who wanted to live off what he did, he recognized that that was the way to go. Now, so we are arguing, well, you're writing your own songs, and that is something against you.
Yeah.
He is arguing, look at my sales. Yeah. Look at my sales.
Yeah. And I think the crowning of all of that is that he became the first Calypsonian to have gotten an honorary doctorate from the UWI. You wrote the citation for him to be named to the Order of the Caribbean Community.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So he's probably been the most decorated, most recognized Calypsonian that we have produced.
Most definitely, he's more recognized than any of our politicians, I can tell you. And he had, I don't know how many awards.
Yeah, you have a chapter on that where it's called Awards, Citations, and Things.
Yes. Yeah, that was his phrase, you know. He said that he had so many awards that he had to, he was thinking of moving all those awards into the house and having his dining room and whatever else somewhere else, because the awards were too much for some little space. You can't put it on a,
they needed a space of their own.
They needed a whole room. But a problem with awards is that not all awards carry any financial reward attached to them. So you could get 10 awards and you're still poor. And I think he recognized that as well. So that he welcomed the awards, he welcomed the recognition, but he always wanted the cash. Which is, we can't give him wrong for that, because calypso singing and the performing industry didn't pay any pension. So
It still doesn't.
Eh?
It still doesn't.
No. So you had to create your own pension.
Yeah.
And when you're a bird flying from tree to tree, and you're having like Rash Shorty, 20-something, 24 children, like Roaring Lion and X24, like Sugar Aloes, 13 to 15 at the time that you know, who brings up all these children? You know, do you accept your responsibility? Do you pay for some of them? Do you pay for all of them? Do you even know all of them? I mean, you know, it's a whole kind of lifestyle. So you have to look for money. You have to look for money. So that we have to see Sparrow in that context as somebody who is looking for money because he foresees that, you know, that there is no pension. There is no pension waiting for him. Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you very much.
Okay. But there's only a piece of it. But anyway.
Education, education, this is the foundation. Our rising population needs sound education to be recognized anywhere you go. You gotta have your certificate to show, to enjoy any kind of happiness. Knowledge is the key to success. Children go to school and learn well, otherwise later on in life you go get rebel. Without an education in your head, your whole life will be pure misery. You're better off dead. For there is simply no room in this whole wide world for an uneducated little boy or girl. Don't allow idle companions to lead you astray. To earn tomorrow, you got to learn today.